Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research. We're going to start out right away looking at an area of the market, a specific industry that's starting to show signs of emergence. A lot of stocks showing some power behind their moves. So we'll get into that. I'm also going to go through all the market conditions for the S&P. We're going to cover that. I missed last week, so we'll make sure we get through all that in detail. Also, we're going to cover the stock requests that came through over the last few weeks. And then I'm going to give you a couple more ideas at the end of the show. So let's go ahead and get going. Okay, so I've got my 4 charts set up in ACP, and I wanted to just go through this real quick. On the bottom left, I've got the monthly chart. Bottom right is a weekly. Upper right is a daily. And then I've got another weekly chart in the upper left that has the relative strength relative to the S&P, and then also the RSIs. Now, the group I want to talk about is the automobiles, all right? And I went through every single stock in the consumer discretionary sector this week. And, there's actually some pretty attractive names, but it was interesting to see this whole group just seemed like, look at the volume. So this first stock is XPEV. Look at the volume that's come into it just over the last week. You can see this in the upper right on this daily chart. But one of the things that really attracts me about this pattern is notice what's going on. We had a downtrend on the monthly chart, went sideways, and now we're starting to emerge. Look at the ADX line in blue is crossing above 25 and rising. It's around 35 right now. And then we've got MACD and its signal line both crossing above the 0 line at this point. So those are attractive qualities from a longer term standpoint. So we've got that working on our favor, momentum kicking into gear on a bigger time frame. And then we get this breakout pattern on the weekly chart. But notice what's taken place, that ADX was strong starting in October of 24, and it stayed strong. It's been above the 25 line through this whole period, even through corrective pattern. All right, so we go through a pretty extensive correction, and ADX stays strong. MACD comes down, and they're all turning. So these are really good qualities for a stock. And then you notice again the volume that's come into play here. So I'd be looking for any kind of a move a little bit closer. 25 is the breakout area. I'd like to be within 5% of that for an entry. Look at something like General Motors. This one actually had kicked into gear a little bit earlier than all these others, but look at the longer term pattern here. We're looking at a low ADX condition for 3 or 4 years, and now all of a sudden it's crossing above 25. The likelihood is this is the start of something rather than the end of something. Now, the weekly chart's doing the same thing. It had a low ADX pattern, and now all of a sudden it's crossing above. So we've got 2 time frames back to back showing good strength in the move, confirming the strength of the price action. All right, so really good quality there. If we look at something like Rivian, this one really intrigues me because look at the way this played out on the swing chart. This swing chart has a big swing here. So this is they call it a zigzag. You see this move here, you see the size of this swing, and then look at the size of this swing. And if you notice what took place, the swings keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller until we get to this point now. We actually make a higher high. And it looks like it has some pretty good dynamics behind it. Again, look at the volume pattern. Look at the fact that the ADX is starting to kick into gear and MACD starting to cross above. And then we have an upturn in the MACD on the weekly chart, turning right above at the 0 line. And again, a nice move in DI. So I like the idea that this is sort of compressing, and now all of a sudden we're starting to show signs of potential expansion here. All right, now there should be pretty good support around 16. That was the last peak of this this last swing high. So we could come and test that area before turning back up, but the volume pattern is really strong. We've got a pretty tight base in place, so we could see some strength coming out of this before we get a pullback. All right, look at Ford. Ford was really lagging General Motors watching this, but notice what's taken place recently. Now, it's still got this big red bar to overcome, but we got through the midpoint of that red bar, which is right around 12.5, 13. And now I think that area could very well act as support for this. It made the move. It's kind of cupping around. Again, had pretty good volume associated with the breakout pattern, but we had this low ADX condition on both the monthly and the weekly, and now the weekly starting to kick into gear, and we're starting to see the monthly start to rise. Really good pattern from that standpoint. Look at NIO. So again, turn on the monthly, big turn with low ADX, and then we had low ADX on the weekly. Now we're getting our first pullback. So the rule of thumb is if you have low ADX in 2 time frames, the lower time frame starts to kick into gear and get above 25. We want to buy the first pullback towards the 18. So that's what's taking place here. I would wait for a signal on the daily, one of my signals out of my book as a trigger, but this is looking pretty attractive. I'm going to give you a bonus here. I was going to just do 5, but I figured I'd throw Tesla in here because it has the same qualities, right? I mean, it made this strong move to the upside, starting to pull back. I think it wants to correct back maybe a little bit closer to 400, but low ADX here starting to emerge, low ADX here starting to emerge. So all these stocks that have those qualities typically are ones that are going to have some follow through. If you're enjoying the content, hit that like button and also subscribe. So I want to make everyone aware I'm going to have the Black Friday sale for the courses, the Advanced Trend and Momentum courses as a bundle. I'm offering at a discount coming up. All right. So I want to just give you a heads up, especially if you plan on buying sometime in the next few days, contact me and we can work something out in advance. But want to make sure anyone who is interested in the bundle to take advantage of this. Okay, so we're going to start out with a run through of the weekly market conditions, and then we'll look at the actual indicators that are creating these. We'll just start with the sentiment. Look at this real quick. That did drop a little bit. There are a few more bulls with the dip in the market, but they're still in a danger zone. We got 42% more bulls than bears, according to the Investors Intelligence Sentiment Survey. Now, I've been following this for a very long time. We're up into this region. It's the type of thing, though, where it's not necessarily a timing tool. All right, we know that we've got higher risk at this point, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's imminent. We got to use our other indicators to really help with that. Overbought, oversold, we're up. We're starting to move up again. We haven't gotten to overbought yet, but we have kind of worked our way back up near that overbought territory. So something we need to watch. But I did leave it in the negative camp because we're pretty close. Now the volatility on the weekly is still declining. That's a very good sign. But the daily volatility is rising, and that means it's a little bit tougher with your trading. If you're trying to do short to intermediate term trading, this indicator, this volatility, is affecting that. So it's something we're going to watch. I'll show you in a minute when we go through the charts. Now the trend and the momentum, especially the trend, you can see all 3 time frames are in the positive camp. Momentum on a monthly looks fine. The weekly is really been pretty not so great, right? It's not necessarily negative, but it's certainly not confirming what we're seeing in the price action. And then the daily is actually negative right now based on the ADX signal. All right, let's go ahead and start looking at the charts. Okay, let's start out with the volatility indicators. We've got the average true range, 20-period average true range. That's the black line here on both of these, both the weekly and the daily. And then I've overlaid a simple moving average 18 on top of that. Now, what we're looking for is the slope of the moving average is really what's important here, because we can get this thing, it can make these, quick moves in both directions. So we don't want to jump around too quick with what we're seeing in terms of whether it's rising or falling. So the smoothing of the moving average can really help with that. We've got a rising 18 right now. Now, we might be crossing down below that, and that would maybe put it a little bit more into the neutral camp. But as long as it's rising, I think we've got a more of a dangerous situation in the market, or a high, what I would consider to be higher volatility, higher risk, especially if you're trying to trade. It's a lot easier to get stopped out with the higher volatility in place. All right. Now, if we look at it on a weekly basis, we've got the declining moving average strongly declining. And so this is a pretty good phase now for, if you're looking at longer term trades, you probably can be, you can probably go ahead and do that just simply based on the fact that the volatility, you're in a position where the likelihood is you can put on trades without having worried of being stopped out again on a using a longer term chart. You can see the RSI 5 is up around 69 right now, so it's trying to work its way up. Now, the reason why I had left this negative, you can see we made this kind of push to the upside and we had a RSI divergence. It's possible we make one more of those and have it be like 3 different tops here with the RSI. So we're going to have to watch and see if this actually can try and break to a new high. The market can do that. I don't know that we'll see, unless it's incredibly powerful, I doubt that we'll see confirmation in the RSI if it's just a minor new peak or even a test of that high. So it's just something to watch here as we move forward. Let's look at the individual time frames now. Look at the monthly. We've gone up. Look at all this pure green on the monthly chart. It's just straight up. Now look at how we're getting closer to the end of the year. Now this is where we kind of want to be on the lookout for signs of a reversal. A lot of times it happens after the new year and we get a bit of a flip. Like you can see what happened in 2021. Now 2021 was a year where we were up the entire year. We started at the low and went straight up, right? And then you can see right as we flipped over into the new calendar, it flipped to the downside. And then it was basically down for most of that year, and then we basically flipped back to the upside back in 2023, right? So with something we want to watch, if this stays green all the way into the end of the year, then we want to start watching January, February for signs of a reversal. It's a really good thing to be on the lookout for. Now, I recognize that we haven't been up the whole year. We had a big drop and then a reversal, but we've been basically green since we broke out again, pretty pure green and pretty strong. Now, if we look at the move in the weekly, I think this is the one that is troubling more than anything. We've had a lot of time. We had monster bars here at the bottom showing the reversal, obviously high volatility, and that's when the indicators will lag when these bars are really big and there's a lot of volatility. Now we've moved up and the volatility has dropped on the weekly chart, and we've continued to carry to the upside. But if you notice, MACD has moved up and continued to confirm. It's starting to look a little tired at this point, but look at how green DI hasn't ever really been able to sustain a move above 25 through this whole period. So that just shows these red bars, every time we get these red bars, these kind of distribution type patterns or negative bars associated with the up move, even this is a bullish pattern, but that had negative DI associated with it. It just prevents this to show that it has any real true strength, trend strength in the pattern. Now, what's happening recently, let me pull that back up. What's happening recently, I'm going to zoom in on this for a second. Look at what the ADX red DI, negative DI is doing. We finally got a higher high in the DI. For the first time in this decline, we're showing the sellers have woken up here. All right. Now, what's missing is green DI actually hasn't made a lower low. You can see we've got this bottom and this bottom and this bottom. We haven't really broken down. I think if we see that, then we'll be in a true contraction phase, and this will actually top out finally. Now, I think the sellers showing up is a big deal. I don't think they're going to go away quickly, although it doesn't mean that we can't continue to maybe push higher a little bit or at least test the high. But just something to be aware of, the fact that the sellers finally showed up on the weekly chart. Now, the reason why I've got the daily chart negative based on the momentum is that we had confirming momentum pretty much through here. Every time we made a new high, we were confirming throughout this move, even though it was kind of late. It got started late because of the way it played out. We finally kick into gear here, and we had ADX confirm, 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 and now you can see it's nowhere to be found. In fact, very low, actually at 10, even though we went to a new high, and now we're still coming back here. So this isn't really the kind of pattern you'd want to see as we're trying to approach new highs. So it's something to be on the lookout for, especially if we fail. We do a test of this and we fail back to the downside. I think this is telling us to be on the lookout for a reversal. A reversal is where the 18 would cross down below the 40, or at least they meet up or something like that, which is going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of more of a down move, or some kind of a choppy action where we go sideways, that type of thing. So that's what I would be on the lookout for as I look through this market. I think that is one of the keys to be on the lookout for. Okay, let's switch over to the IWM. Just take a quick peek at this. Not seeing the kind of strength, especially on a relative basis. This black line shows the relative strength versus the S&P, and it's been basically in a decline now for a couple, really started in 2021, the last decline, and it's just been trending to the downside. Now, what we're looking for is an actual 1, 2, 3 reversal where we take a trend line break, right, which we've done. We've come pretty close. It's really kind of, I guess, not strong enough. Probably need to see a little bit more strength, and then we get a pullback and test, and then a turn back to the upside. I like to do that on the relative strength lines. Anytime you're using a relative strength versus the S&P, keep an eye on stuff like that because it can give you an edge. A lot of times, even ahead of price, sometimes it gives a smoother switch into the trend reversal. Now, I mean, we've shown pretty good strength off the low, but once we broke out, it really hasn't done anything. So we're going to need to see some follow through from this breakout point. Let's take a look at silver. Silver has made a pretty strong move here, and I know a lot of people were thinking this was a top, but the volatility, the thing is that when you look at gold and silver and you go back historically, it doesn't have the qualities of ending action yet. We don't see that. I think first of all, the momentum is way too strong. So if you're looking for a reversal, then you have to have some kind of a climax. And I mean, yeah, there was volume here, and it had some volatility associated with it, but it just doesn't have what I would consider to be the type of qualities where you'd be looking for a top. So I'm expecting this to go to another new high. Now, what I can promise you is probably continued volatility with gold and silver. But at this point, I think we've got a pretty good look to the pattern. It's making a pretty good comeback. We recrossed above the 18-day line, and I think that line will probably act as support in the short term. But I wouldn't be surprised if we start pushing to another new high here. Just be careful. If this volatility keeps up, then you could start to see something that looks like a fireworks show at the end. So be careful as we watch this. But I think as long as this momentum is this strong, I think we can. We can be planning that this is going to continue to carry to the upside, unless the volume explodes again and we make another move to the upside right away, like a big move here, straight up, and get vertical through a surging market or something like that. I would stick with this. All right, BITO. We had this recent breakdown in the Bitcoin. And I think just based on the way this is playing out here with this break, we're going to need to reconstruct the pattern and reverse it back to the upside. So a true reversal, meaning we're not just doing a quick trend line break or something like that. We're going to need to see this move up and then come back down and test and then turn back to the upside and do a 1, 2, 3 reversal. That's what I would be watching for here, especially just based on the placement of where this is right now and how weak this is. Based on the overall pattern here. All right, let's take a look at META. So we're coming down on Meta to a really key area. We're sitting on the 18-month line, all right? And we've got pretty good momentum on the monthly, although we're going through a contraction phase. I think this is real important. This is what I was talking about with the market. You see how when these lines start to come together and work this way, then this is a period, a phase of contraction. This isn't necessarily one quick pullback and then we go straight up. We had a V bottom off the low. This thing never paused, never consolidated. I wouldn't be surprised if it actually does it at a higher level. It doesn't necessarily have to go down, but we could spend some time working sideways here, and it could be an extensive period where we go sideways. GLW has made an incredible move, surging market way away from the 18-month line and way away from the 18-week line. So you see all this error. I mean, I don't really measure it. I don't put it in terms of percentages or anything like that. I can just see this is pretty far away and that's pretty far away. Now, yeah, we've paused towards the 18, but I don't know. I don't like the way this whole thing has set up here. You might get one little quick move to the upside, but you're going to have to be really nimble. What I would do is wait for the next pullback closer to the 18-week line and see if it has the properties and the setup we want and look for, and then you could trigger yourself off the daily chart. SOFI, similar situation, got really extended on the monthly, and now look how we consolidated some on the weekly chart and came down and touched that line with good momentum conditions, and now we're kind of moving to the upside. So you might be able to get it. This is really sloppy the way it played out because of the earnings and everything. So I don't know. Maybe if this paused a little bit and held this 30 level and turned back to the upside, that would be an entry to consider. HIMS, I mean, I think this is just way too volatile, and we've broken the moving averages. I know we're coming towards the 18-month line, but look at the size of these bars and all this. It looks to me like distribution. So I think you got to be pretty careful there. All right, I got a couple of ideas that I think are worth noting, at least following. And as always, everything I've talked about today, do your own research. All right, do your own due diligence on everything that you hear from me. Now, look at the way this pattern has developed. We went through this consolidation above the 18-month line, and we were getting back above this big red bar here. And we're starting to see improvement in energy and certainly some coal stocks and stuff like that. So this is pretty interesting from the way it's playing out. Watch for the next pullback a little bit closer to the 18-week line. Look at open door technology. So we get this strong move to the upside, and look at the pullback to the 18-week with really good momentum conditions. We even have a pinch play develop with strong momentum and a really good volume pattern. And now we've made it through earnings, and now this is starting to emerge. So this is something that you could definitely consider. It broke the trend line. Because this is a volatile stock, I would probably look for some kind of a little hitch here, little hook, and turn back to the upside, and that could look really good. And then look at VIP. This is really what I'm talking about. Really nice base, another stock in the consumer discretionary space. Big base working sideways. We break out, and then we get a pullback and test that breakout area and turn back to the upside. Low ADX here, low ADX here, both starting to emerge. This is starting to do the little hitch that I was just talking about. We break the downtrend line, we make a little hitch and turn back to the upside. That would look really attractive. Thanks for watching today. So if you want to learn more about some of these techniques, you can go to my YouTube channel. I have changed the name. It's Joe Rabil now. I had someone impersonating me. We got rid of that channel, and now I just want to make sure everyone knows. If you want to find me, you just type in Joe Rabil, and the handle is Joe Rabil RSR. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. Hope everyone has a great trading week. If you have any stock requests, you can send them to stocktalk@stockcharts.com or just put them in the comment area below. Have a great week. We'll see you.